Good afternoon, and thanks for tuning in to an all-new episode of American Roundball, where we break down the top stories and headlines in women's hoops across the conference. We now welcome in basketball analyst Monica McNutt via Skype. Hey, Monica, great to see you.
Hey, Haley, great to be talking women's hoops once again.
Well, let's start off by talking about a very important non-conference matchup this week. UConn takes on South Carolina. What are some of the keys for you in this game, and do you think the Huskies are going to have a little extra motivation taking on the defending national champions?
So before we jump to the keys, I do want to answer your second question, and I think the answer to that is yes. Now, we've heard UConn give us the spiel in terms of last year is done, pressure's off their back, they lost, they were still a very successful team on the season. But I don't know, Haley, I don't know that I buy it. You were supposed to be in a national championship game last year, and this is the team that was in the place where you were supposed to be. They were wearing your glass slipper. You can't tell me that as a competitor, that's not something that you think about when you match up with them. Now, on the flip side, yes, we are the Americans, so we're paying attention to what UConn has at hand to do. I will say this about the Gamecocks. They know that there's sort of this perception amongst some that they fell into that national title game, and Mississippi State was the team that did the actual work. Had it been UConn, I don't know if the Gamecocks come out victorious. Nonetheless, they won the title, they're the defending champs, and now it's the Huskies' turn to knock them off. Now, when you talk keys to the game, the first thing I look at is scoring. We should be in for a high-scoring affair. The Huskies are putting up 90 points while the Gamecocks are putting up 80, but for me, it's how they're putting up those points. The Huskies are at their best when they're getting production out of not just their 5 starters who can easily give you double digits, but they're getting a couple people that come off the bench and chip in maybe 9 or so. One of my favorites is Crystal Dangerfield, who just does a great job in terms of handling the ball for this team. I'm interested to see her match up with Tyasha for Don Staley's squad. I think that's going to be a great guard-to-guard matchup. And of course, we've got to talk about the big play, Haley. We talk about Asia Wilson, who now has to go against Azurá Stevens or Naphecia Collier, depending on how the Huskies decide to defend the Gamecocks. And then, of course, Chantel Jennings is also a fantastic option for the Gamecocks. So when I look at keys, obviously, whoever scores more points is going to win. But I'm going to be curious about these individual battles. And then I think it will come down to stamina. You look at what South Carolina has had to deal with in the SEC. They are not undefeated in that conference. They've lost 2 games. You could argue that they're a little bit more battle-tested. On that same thought process, though, will fatigue begin to set in for them because UConn is able to rest their starters in most contests because they're beating opponents handily. So I'm looking for those individual matchups. I'm looking for scoring. And then I think one of the things that we tend to overlook in the game of basketball is actually rebounding and second chance opportunities.
All right, well, certainly a game to circle on the calendar this week. That one tips, again, Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern on ESPN. Now, Monica, I have to give you some props last week because when we brought up players to watch, you chose Megan Walker from UConn, and then here she goes this week, earning Freshman of the Week honors. Some pretty good psychic powers by you right there. But who are your players to watch this week?
All right, this week I've got 2 players to watch. And ironically, we've talked about UConn. We kicked off our conversation. UConn is still a part of the conversation in interesting ways. I'm going to start with Cincinnati guard Anna Owens, who basically laid an egg in their overtime loss against East Carolina. Now, East Carolina's doing some fantastic things, but Anna Owens is something that's been very consistent for Coach Elliott's squad. So for her to have that type of game is unlike her. So being the leader that she is and having the seasoning that she does and the role she plays for that team, I'm expecting her to bounce back. Now, granted, she's going to have to bounce back against Connecticut, but that's a double-edged sword in that we know the behemoth that Connecticut is. So anytime you're a competitor, you step on the floor, you're ready to go. The score may not indicate the best thing for your team, but as far as individual performances go, I'm expecting her to get back in gear because she has to be a key player for this Cincinnati Bearcat team to stay in the fold. On the other side, I'm looking at Lisa Stockton's Tulane squad, and I want to know, can Kayla Manuidi-Rangi continue to ease the load for Colby Morgan? Now, Colby Morgan is the only player on that team that consistently is averaging double figures, but when Kayla is playing well, it helps take the load off of her. She's sort of an outlet so that Morgan can still be able to score in the midst of all the defensive attention that she garners. In the last 2 games, she's put up solid numbers. So I'm looking for her to add some momentum. And Tulane is going to play Houston. Now, that was a 98-92 overtime loss when Houston went to New Orleans. But Manuidi had 16 points, and she was 1 of 6 from the 3-point line. So I'm expecting her to want to bounce back and, one, what was a tough loss for the Green Wave, and two, what was a tough shooting night for her. So I think if she can get involved, then she opens up some things for her teammate Kobe Morgan, who's having an awesome year.
Well, each and every conference game at this point becoming more and more important as we near the conference tournament. Monica, when you look at the conference standings, I think at first glance you notice how jam-packed it is there in the middle. Who are some of the teams that you expect to emerge from that middle of the pack group?
Well, when we talk about the middle of the pack, I automatically think Houston, Cincinnati, and Wichita State. Now, Wichita State had a 5-game winning streak going until they ran into a nasty Pirates squad, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But of those three particular teams, I'm going to give the edge to Wichita State. And Haley, we're at that point in the season where protecting home court matters most. I mean, at this point, everybody's getting a little bit dinged up. Everybody's tired. You've probably played one another once or twice at this point. So not only do you have the scouting report that your coaching staff worked so diligently on, you've also got mental notes that you took from the last time that you played this team. But Coach Keitha Adams will get to host both Houston and Cincinnati. So I think that's going to be the advantage in terms of protecting home court and really kind of creating some space for the Shockers to move up in the standings.
So UCF moved into second place in the conference standings, and they're a game ahead of the Bulls. But as we approach these last 4 weeks, can the Knights secure that second place spot with the way they've been playing so well lately under Coach Abe?
Now, that's the key right there, Haley. They've got to remain consistent. I think they're getting some tremendous production out of Zakiya Saunders, who is on the honor roll this week. They've got Saunders and Kaba, who are averaging double digits consistently. I don't know that just 2 scorers consistently in double digits can get you where the UCF Knights are trying to go, so that could be tricky. But what I will say about Coach Abe's group is I love that defense that they play. She and I had a chance to talk about that at Media Day. I'm a big fan of 1-2-2 press, and her team really kind of throws the kitchen sink at teams in terms of what they do defensively, and they cause some confusion. But on the other end, I like their patience in the half court. Sure, they've got guards that can score, but they've also got bigs that can at least touch the ball, even if they're not in a position to go straight up traditional post style back to the basket, get a double. They move the ball very well in their half-court sets, whether it's someone flashing to the high post, diving to the low post. The ball doesn't tend to get stuck with that squad, and I think that's something that benefits them because they're able to share the load. When you look at the Bulls in terms of that team that they may be neck and neck with, we obviously know about Laska. We know about Jesperson in terms of what they do. I just wonder if the Knights will be able to take advantage defensively, because I think, to me, USF does a little bit less trickery in terms of defending. So if they can really make their presence known and be a nuisance to teams defensively and really capitalize on turnovers, I think the Knights might be in position to cause some havoc for the Bulls squad.
Monica, you mentioned ECU a few moments ago, and they're starting to turn some heads. They had a very big comeback win against Wichita State at home this week. What's gotten into the Pirates?
So I think that the Pirates are having fun, Haley, and that's the straight up answer. I mean, I'm combing through stats, and when I get an opportunity to watch their games, there's not a ton that jumps out at you like you would say, oh, they're crushing teams in terms of rebounding, they're forcing teams assists to turnover ratio to be all out of whack. That's not really the case when you look at the last 2 victories that they were able to get, but they're having fun. When you go through the game notes, they're talking about guys achieving their first career highs, their first double-doubles. And I think when you're at a place in the game of basketball where you're hitting milestones and firsts are happening, you are having fun. There's a sense of confidence that you have that is just so hard to duplicate. Either you have it or you don't. And I think also, to be honest, the Pirates are sort of playing with house money. I don't know how high the expectations were for them this year with head coach Heather Macy, but they're capitalizing on every opportunity, and it looks really good. I think she's really gotten her group to take charge and understand that wins do not come easy, and they are something that should be cherished. And I mean, we talked about this in one of our earlier Roundball sessions. She's one of the coaches that was more memorable to me from Media Day, and not because she was new or not because any of the other coaches didn't say anything that stuck with me, but something about Coach Macy. I mean, she's not the tallest chick. She's got this little edge on her shoulder. Like, she's got this pit bull mentality thing. And I think it's rubbing off on her squad. And ECU is just doing a great job.
All right. Well, fun is the key, Monica. Thanks so much for joining us here in the studio via Skype. Enjoy the games this week.
Thanks. You too.
Don't forget, for wraparound women's hoops coverage, you can always follow along on Twitter at American_WBB. As always, thanks for tuning in to an all-new episode of American Roundball. See you back here next Wednesday.